Everybody. Hello, everybody. Jumping on.
Everybody.
I went on one, not one beat. Hello.
Right.
Hi.
We're actually live. We're officially started right now. So welcome aboard, everybody. It's great to see everybody here on Memorial Day Eve here in the chat room. Scott and I wondered how many people would actually attend tonight. It's really great to have everybody here. Every Sunday night, we get together with the same purpose, the same intention, and that is to learn about hypnosis, to share some ideas, to actually go through some guided processes related to hypnosis, and to learn some really cool stuff. So this is a great place to ask any questions. There's a chat box below, and feel free to ask any questions at any time. And as usual, I'm about to type in the chat box while Scott says something, and I type.
Hi, guys. Richard and I were talking the other day of
Hey, Scott, you're muted. You're muted somehow. Hey, you're muted. Scott, you're muted. Your lips are moving. But your lips are moving, but you're not speaking. Yeah, so you're muted. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. You're muted, Scott. Welcome aboard. It's great to have everybody here. Every Sunday night we get together for the same purpose, and that is to watch Scott have tech difficulties while he logs into Richard Clark's account. It's always humorous and a great way to start out the new week. And welcome aboard people in the UK who do not have a holiday tomorrow and are staying up till 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning and then have to get ready for the day. So thank you for joining us. Scott Sandlin, you are muted. I would sign out and sign back in. So Scott, I would suggest signing out and signing back in because log out and log in. Okay, Scott is logged out, and Scott is logged out and is going to log back in. So anyway, so we start off tonight with some tech difficulties. It's great to be here, though, even with a few tech difficulties. Let me type something in the box, which is what I was doing when Scott disappeared. So we have started. If you don't see us, click the start button above or refresh your page. There we go. So anyway, it's great to have everybody here. Scott will be here in just a minute or so as he logs into his own and appropriate account. I spent the day, or the last couple days, actually editing a whole lot of video. And Scott Sandlin and I, when we were in Florida, we had a chance at the IMDHA convention to present a whole day training on hypnosis for addiction, alcoholism and drug addiction. And as a whole day seminar will be, some parts were awesome and some totally sucked, and some of them were kind of in the middle. And so I came back home and I edited out all the stuff that sucked and left only the stuff that's good. And above tonight's webcast is a link. It says Access Hypnosis for Addiction videos. So if you want to see the 5 awesome video clips from our presentation in Florida, it's free. You don't have to pay for anything. We didn't even record the whole thing, so you can't actually buy the whole thing. We just excerpted the really, really good stuff. So there are 2 hypnotic processes that Scott guides us through. There's a lecture or 2 that I do and a lecture that Scott does that we think will be real helpful to you. So if you want to, above this video, access the Hypnosis for Addiction videos from Florida last week, it's absolutely free. Just click that link and bingo, you'll have full access. Scott, are you back?
I am so sorry. So that's the fun of having a shared profile. Richard Clark and I have a shared profile for the Newport Clinic, which is our clinic where we have HPTI classes and all that. And I was logged in as that, and then he logged in and it automatically muted me, and I couldn't unmute us. So it was so I just had to log out and log back in under my Gmail account. So sorry, everybody. But I'm back, and now that I'm logging as me, I'm in complete control of my account.
It's always great to see you logging in as yourself rather than on a shared account. And you can see here that I am sitting in the Sea of Tranquility tonight. I put this backdrop up because, as most of you know, if you're watching the news at all, Oklahoma is flooding away. So it's we actually have house guests who've been evacuated from their area. So it's been really quite a busy day around here. So I decided, since Oklahoma looks a lot like this, only without the palm trees, this would be the appropriate backdrop for tonight. So, but it's great to have everybody here. And Scott, what are we going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about all kinds of things. You sent me a giant list.
Yeah, so Richard and I were talking the other day about it, and we were saying, I wonder how many people are actually even going to be in the chat room on Sunday night, because it's Memorial Day weekend, like you were saying. And so we said the people who were going to show up were going to be the more motivated people, or the Europeans, but mostly the motivated people. And so we decided that we were going to talk about motivation. And as soon as we started, spitballing back and forth on, pieces about motivation, I like Richard said, I sent him a list. Because motivation is a really interesting topic for you because it's so fundamental. You can dive into a lot of different stuff. Some of it is what to do with clients who aren't motivated, what to do to help clients who are motivated in the wrong direction. There's really a lot of ways you can run with the topic of motivation. And the most simple piece of it is that you can oversimplify motivation into two things: motivation towards pleasure and away from pain. And so just towards good, away from bad, that's it. So when we're talking about motivation with our clients, or even in ourselves, when we say, how motivated are you to come to class on a Sunday night? How motivated are you to get new clients? Those sorts of things, to get the change you're looking for in the world. When we're looking at that, it really just comes down to a very simple mechanism of towards good and away from bad. And the first thing I want to talk about is the benefits of each of those strategies and the drawbacks of each of those strategies, because they both have them. And so before we get into any of the applications of any of this, I just want to start there with the pros and cons. So starting with motivation away from. And this is aversion therapy, but it's not just aversion therapy. I see people who use motivation away from strategies in their practices. And it's, like I said, it's not just aversion. There's also people who are talking about consequences, right? And or using negative feelings like guilt and shame. Motivation away from is very strong. It is very powerful, and it seeks instant gratification. The easy way to think of that is putting your hand on the stove. The desire to get your hand off the stove, that's motivation away from pain. That's a nice thing. It keeps you safe. Motivation away from is powerful and instantly gratifying. The problem with motivation away from is it lacks direction and focus. The easy way to think of it is to put yourself in the middle of a circle, and that is point A, and every direction is distance from that spot. And if that spot is the thing you want to get away from, every direction in the circle, even if you're running around like a maniac, that counts as success. So, oversimplified, go into Google Maps right now and just type, "get me out of here." You're not going to get results, right? And that's the problem with motivation away from. So although it's powerful and although it's strong, it's not necessarily going to send you someplace good. It's just going to send you someplace different. It sometimes will send you someplace worse. We've all been in a situation where we just wanted to get away from a problem, and in doing so, we created more trouble for ourselves, and that's really frustrating. Going to what Richard was talking about while I was switching accounts, the addiction talk that we just gave at the IMDHA conference, and the one we'll be doing in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, here in Newport Beach. Alcohol is a great example of a motivation away from strategy. If you're feeling hungry, angry, lonely, tired, sad, shame, whatever, and you want to not feel shame, blackout drunk solves that temporarily. Now, obviously, it doesn't solve it permanently, but it certainly solves it in the temporary. And that's, the flaw with that motivational strategy is you're not looking at best outcome. You're just looking at change, just different. So I see colleagues use that too often and without doing this other piece, which I'll get to now, which is motivation towards. And motivation towards is great because there is point B. There's the destination in Google Maps, and you know what you want to talk about. You know what you want to type. You know where you want to go, and you know the step-by-step directions to get there. And if you get knocked off course, you can course correct, and that's wonderful. The problem with motivation towards is that sometimes it's just too far away. And that thing, that goal that you want to get to is so far, you just go, screw it, right? Like, forget it. I want to get, if you say my goal is I want to get a PhD in astrophysics. Well, if I want a PhD in astrophysics, it's going to take a lot of work between where I am now and where I need to be. I need to take a whole bunch of math classes. I need to get good grades. I need to apply to the right schools, on and on and on, before I would even get to a dissertation. And it just looks so far. We see this with New Year's resolutions where someone says, I want to lose 100 pounds. I want to lose 50 pounds. And they can't lose 50 pounds this week. That's a real commitment, and the success is so far, they lose their motivation. And so that's the pros and the cons of motivation towards and motivation away from. And at our best with our clients, we use them together, right? We use them together, and in doing so, we get the best of both worlds. Here's what I mean. The easiest example of this, to visualize this is NASA, right? So 3 years ago, the IMDHA conference, maybe 4 years ago, the IMDHA conference, I saw a spaceship go up, a shuttle launch. It was one of the last shuttle launches that NASA was doing from, that's not Cape Canaveral. What is that?
It is Cape Canaveral, I think.
It is Cape Canaveral, yeah. So I took the drive down to Cape Canaveral to watch the spaceship launch, and it was awesome, right? It's the coolest thing. If you've never seen it, it's just it's remarkable. And it's all this smoke and loud noises and all stuff, and it's a building being lifted off the ground by rockets. It's gigantic, and that's motivation away from. Oh, I drink tea.
Sorry, you were talking about Cape Canaveral. I couldn't resist.
That's all right. Tonight's fun. So it goes up. Spaceship goes up into space, right? And everyone, all the nerds at NASA are all high-fiving in the control room like, we did it. And here's what no one at NASA ever says after a successful space launch. No one has ever said this in the history of NASA after a successful space launch. What do you want to do with this one, right? Because it's really hard to launch a spaceship. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of math and a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of stuff. So you need to know what you're going to do with it first. Before there's the push away, you need to have a plan. And that's what I explain to my clients. Yes, we can use aversion. Now, I don't use a lot of aversion. I use very, very little, and very, very rarely would I, because just stylistically not me. But when you're talking about motivation away from, the repulsion, the frustration, the anger, great. We're going to have that, and we need to make sure that when you have that, we know what we want to point it at. We know where we want to point the gun, right? We know where we want to point the cannon, so we're sending the thing in the right direction. I can go into a lot of details, and we can extrapolate out these basic principles to a lot of different client sessions and a lot of different possibilities. But I just want to start with this core set of principles for tonight, that the problem most of our clients have is that they're using motivation away from too much. It's just disproportionately used considering its negative side effects and considering its limitations. It's just used too often. And so we need to help our clients learn how to finish complaining properly. Because a client comes in and they tell us what sucks. They tell us what's wrong, and that's great. A client comes in and says, I hate riding in elevators. A client comes in and they say, I hate my mother. A client comes in and says, I smoke too much pot. Whatever the client says, that's the problem. And they're not telling us what they want. So we say, okay, what do you want instead? We require a future pace to do this. Instead, I want to have peace with my mother. Instead, I want to feel comfortable in elevators. Instead, I want to stop smoking marijuana. Or whatever the case may be. Teach them how to finish the complaint. And built into finishing the complaint is a future pace, and is a point B, and is the destination we're going towards. And I teach them that phrase, finish your complaints. with the words, "Instead I want." So say what you were going to say, and then add, "Instead I want." And the more you do that, the easier it is to be successful at stuff. Otherwise, you're just playing dodgeball with bad scenarios and situations. So really learning how to complain properly, because complaining is a great skill. Complaining is a wonderful thing done right. The problem is most people only do the first half of the complaint, and then that is an F. So those are the big sort of overarching themes for all this stuff. And I'm not looking at the chat room yet. I had to just log out, and so I didn't log back in.
Yeah, let me mention a couple things. There's a chat room right below this video, and you can type in any questions. So if you have a question for Scott on what he's talking about, feel free to ask it. If you have a question on something else that's not related to what Scott is talking about, feel free to ask it. If you have a question for me, I'm more than happy to answer it. And this is a time not only for us to talk about what we wanted to, but also for you to bring your ideas. Now, you know, one of the interesting things about motivation, Scott, is the physical aspect of it. So, for example, I was actually surfing earlier today on sort of the psychology of motivation. And one of the things that I discovered was that there was actually a study done in that posing in powerful poses, right, for 2 minutes actually causes a person to take action on their thought. So power poses versus
the Tarzan King Kong sort of poses, right?
And when people intentionally do that from a physiological perspective, if you're unmotivated and you can't get anything done during the day, stand for 2 minutes in a power pose, and the research says you're going to get it done. I thought that was pretty interesting, and it gave me some ideas for some post-hypnotic suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, they say the same thing with fake smiling will make you happy, right? I mean, there's just a physiology to this, and like I said, King Kong and Tarzan. I mean, primal amygdala stuff, right? That they're just, beating on your chest makes you feel manly and testosterone and all that stuff. Testosterone is a word we're going to use tonight, as if it's real English, and not an Italian dish. But yeah,
I think they call that. If you remember what they call it, mountain oysters.
Yeah, the Rocky Mountain oysters, testosterone. I've seen those studies, and it makes perfect sense. And so when you're talking about your clients, if you just give them some post-hypnotics, that just says, look, after brushing your teeth in the morning, before you get to work, 2 minutes in front of the mirror, flexing that bod to tell you what you want to do. That might even just get them motivated to get to the gym, right? We've got activity in the chat room, I see. Any questions in the chat room so far? I haven't logged into it.
Oh, there are no questions in the chat room. I actually Googled testosterone, the San Francisco treat, and nobody has made a parody of that Rice-A-Roni song yet using testosterone. So,
well, I don't think testosterone is a word that's commonly being thrown around.
We have a new. Yeah.
We can be first to market on that one, no problem.
Yeah, no, actually, Heather, he has not been reading in the chat room, but I have been reading in the chat room, and
hi, Heather.
Thought the dog training sort of analogy was pretty useful here, and I'm probably going to borrow it also. Heather wrote something interesting, Scott. In a dog training, we say you can't train the negative. It's more effective to train
to reward the
So the dog training answer is split the positive into small chunks.
Yeah. Fast positive feedback, right? That's what dogs love. You give them a bunch of treats every time they do the right thing. A little bit of a treat, good. A little bit of a treat, good. A little bit of a treat, good.
Isn't that what a slot machine is?
Yes. Actually, this is why golf is such an addictive sport. Golf and slot machines are so addictive because random positive reinforcement is the thing we crave and enjoy the most. And golf and slot machines are random positive reinforcement. Same thing as like carnival games. Those are the things that are really just so satisfying and gratifying. because you're like, I did it. I don't know how I did that. I've got to make sure I can do that again. And that feeling is motivating. So, just kind of talking this through, when Richard and I were kind of brainstorming about this topic, unmotivated clients. Unmotivated clients, there are a number of people who will say, well, if the client isn't motivated, kick them out of your office, and tell them to come back when you're motivated. I can understand that. I can also understand the argument, motivating people is your job. If you can't get the person motivated who already spent the money and made the appointment, what are you doing? So probing questions can help motivate someone, kind of playing dumb. And saying, so you like it this way? Now, I'm going to oversimplify this. I'm not going to dress it up. But at its most simple, without any elegance to it, it's so you're smoking a pack and a half a day and you like that. No, I don't like it. But it's worth it to you? No, it was worth it to me. Okay, I don't understand. So if it's not worth it to you anymore, why are you still doing it? Like, well, I'm just kind of used to it, or I'm addicted, or I don't want to stop, or I'm afraid of the withdrawals, or I'm afraid I can't do it, or I'm afraid of whatever. Okay, so do you want the solution more than you're afraid of the problem? A friend of mine named Dan Paris, who's awesome. I love his NLP stuff. One of the things he talks about, I don't know if it's original to him or not, is a term called the butt flip. And I think the butt flip is a wonderful way to help people be motivated. And I hope he won't mind that I'm sharing his stuff. But the butt flip idea is the word butt negates the stuff that you just said before the word butt. And so they'll say something like, I really want to lose weight, but I've been too busy to go to the gym. Dan Paris will take that sentence and just flip it on the word butt. The butt flip. And so they'll say, so you've been too busy to go to the gym, but you really want to lose weight. Get that thing they want at the end. So there's no objection, there's no excuses, there's no rationalization, it's just the desire. And remember, when we're talking about motivating someone, you can't motivate somebody with logic. You motivate with feeling. You motivate somebody with pure, simple feeling. Now, I'm assuming that Richard has turned off his microphone and camera for a very good reason, and I'm just going to keep talking as if he hasn't done that, and then I'm sure he'll be back in just a moment. Or maybe something came unplugged and this is news to him, in which case, Richard, you're gone. And now it's your turn for technical issues tonight. But you can't motivate somebody with logic. We motivate with feeling. We motivate with why, not how. Why is way more important than how. When you figure out the why, the hows take care of themselves, because how is logistics, and why is the feelings. Here's what I mean. Those little kids, 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, they, why, right? And it gets annoying. Pick up your Legos. Why? Because I said so. Why? Because people are coming over. Why? Because we like them. Why? It goes forever. What they're saying is, what's in it for me? That's what they're saying. They don't have the vocabulary to say it, but they're saying, what's in it for me? It's a 5-year-old, it's a 4-year-old saying, why should I clean up my Legos if they bring me joy and cleaning doesn't? Why would you say so? Why would we invite these people over? Why do we like them if they don't like Legos on the ground? They're trying to understand motivation, right? They're trying to understand the impetus for doing these things. It's just what we learn from every police show. They need to have motive, right? Now, I'm not a cop, my brother-in-law's a cop, but I understand motive is incredibly important when establishing a crime, especially for lawyers. What is the motive? Why would they do this thing? And then you say, well, for the money. Okay, that makes sense. Or for the rage or jealousy. Or well, there's motive. We need the motive. So when a client comes into you saying, I want to stop smoking, what's the motive? What's the motivation for them? Not the generic one, not what my motivation would be, not I know smoking's bad for you, not it costs too much money. What's their feelings? And we pin all of this right on those feelings, and we wrap everything we're doing, every script, every question, every future pace, every process, we're just wrapping around these sets of pure primal feelings, because that's where the charge is, right? Last piece on that. You guys seen the movie Inception, right? It's a wonderful movie. It's very fun. It's about the unconscious mind and a bunch of other things and action sequences. But one of the idea of the movie Inception, they're trying to implant an idea in someone's head so that they will act on it. And they're having this brainstorm meeting about what it should be, and they have a chalkboard and they're drawing and they're talking about what it should be. And he says, we need this to be a simple sentence. It's emotionally charged. A single emotionally charged thought is what generates motivation. I think that's completely true. I think that's wonderfully true. And that's what we're trying to do with our clients. We're trying to get them to hold on to one emotionally charged thought. So when we're using mantras, when we're using post-hypnotic suggestions, when we're using trigger and anchor phrases, making those be built around the feeling and the benefit, not the logic and not the problem, the emotional benefit of this change. That's where you're going to get way more bang for the buck. Remind them what's in it for them.
All right, let me ask you a question then, Hypno Boy.
Aha.
By the way, I stepped out for a moment, so I turned my video, my sound off, and apparently everyone thought I had been sucked into the black hole of internet technology difficulties.
I was more afraid that you've been washed away in a flood.
Oh yes, no, I'm actually in the highest part of the neighborhood, so I don't have to worry about that. Which is why our house is the refugee center.
Understood.
So all right, back to you, Hypno Boy. So all of this sounds awesome. But what am I supposed to do with the client who's in my office? They're unmotivated. They don't seem to get things done. They have no follow through. What are 3 things that I can actually do with them other than have them stand in power poses for 2 minutes? Which, by the way, tying this to what you said earlier about testosterone, actually the pose itself increases testosterone levels, and that's part of where the motivation comes from.
Yeah.
But other than that, what can I actually do as a hypnotist to help motivate people using some of these concepts that you've talked about?
Sure. So the first one is question asking. Ask stupid, obvious questions. The ability to ask a question that seems obvious in a way that doesn't seem disrespectful or stupid is a very important skill. And to not just make it be, well, how does it feel? You need to dress that question up a little bit. But not a ton. You just need to dress it up a little bit. And ask them questions about what's in it for them. Ask them questions about the benefits and the reason, and the good and the bad. Ask them about the emotions involved in all of this. Ignore logistics at the onset. Now, you can get into logistics later so that you can do the butt flip, right? Use the emotions to be the driver and the fuel for this thing. So ask the questions that are going to get you to those feelings. And if you don't know what their specific feelings are about this issue and their specific feelings are about their success, you're not done with your pre-talk. You're not done with your intake. Your intake needs to include those things. Otherwise, you're just picking a script at random and then reading it. And then there's nothing wrong with reading the script, but you need to wrap the script around their feelings. So that's the first thing, is ask those right questions. Next thing is, it is very rare that I do a session that doesn't include future pacing. It's very, very rare. And it could be a sentence or two. It could be 10 minutes. It really depends on the client. But it's future pacing allows them to go there first and to visualize or experience what it's going to be like, and then we can trigger or we can anchor that feeling, to keep them going. They say motivation is like brushing your teeth or taking a shower. It lasts for a day and then it needs to be repeated, something like that. It's said better than that, but that's the idea. The benefits are not supposed to be permanent. Activity is supposed to be repeated. So give them a process, a phrase, or an idea, or a trigger that's going to revivify the feelings of the future pace. The third,
I've always said it, nothing ever existed without it being a thought first. So these glasses didn't just materialize. I had to decide I would like to buy some glasses that are blue and have an S on the side. And then I, went out to seek it, and then I found them, and so now I have blue glasses with an S on the side. In other words, nothing ever just materialized; it didn't just show up. Everything had to be an idea first, and so future pacing is a basic strategy in hypnosis and motivation.
Yeah, exactly, and that's such a fundamental, easy piece, right? Think about it before you do it. Think about it, and then you can. My third piece is teach them how to finish their complaints, and make them finish their complaints, and have them. It's easier to notice it in other people, so have them pick a couple people in their lives who will be good with this, and have them hold them accountable. So when someone complains, say, "What do you want instead?" Every time someone complains, say, "What do you want instead?" And then they'll start being aware of it in themselves. So ask good questions, future pace, finish your complaints. Those are the three things if you want a client to be motivated. Because they're like, "Man, I hate these cigarettes." What I want instead is have them remember and be reminded of what they want. And that's when we get them to be motivated. So that's what I got.
By the way, let me just throw in a couple of things here. Every Sunday night we get together, the same purpose, talk about some ideas, answer some questions. For some reason, nobody has any questions other than what happened to me, but they do have some great quotes. Brian actually shared one from Zig Ziglar. People often say why motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily. A Zig Ziglar quote. Thanks for posting that, Brian, because it's actually one of my favorite Zig Ziglar quotes. Every Sunday night we get together to ask questions, to share ideas, to talk about different things. Sometimes we have guests. Last week we had Timer and Roy Hunter. So if you missed that, go into the archives and watch the replay. The week before that, we had Michael Ellner. I think in the next week or two, we'll have Alan Barsky, and so there's lots of stuff going on every Sunday night right here at Sunday Live. Right above this video is actually a link to the free videos that Scott and I put together from our talk at IMDHA. So there are 5 videos. There are 2 processes Scott guides us through. There are 3 teaching sessions. It's over an hour's worth of information. And so go ahead and access those videos because they're free and they're awesome, and they're right above this video. And then, of course, we always go through a hypnotic process. And so why don't we go ahead and do that now, Scott?
All right. Yeah, you guys are getting a heavy dose of me tonight. Richard's been noticeably focused on
refugees.
Just people just going by. He's just been throwing out life preservers. So let's do a hypnosis process. When everybody's ready, go ahead, close your eyes, take a comfortable deep breath in, comfortable breath out, comfortable breath in, comfortable breath out, and just relax a little bit further. And now in a moment, not yet, but in a moment, I'm going to count from 5 down to 1. And as I count down each number, you'll find yourself relaxing further and further. And before we do, I'd like you to think about something in your life that is less than perfect. Now, for the sake of this process, we don't need to think of the biggest problem or the greatest challenge in your life. Let's pick something a little bit smaller and a little bit easier to watch the changes. So let's just pick something that's approachable in your life that's less than ideal. And when you have that idea in your head, just realize that the intention of tonight is to make change in that area. And so with that concept and that intention in mind, I'm going to go ahead and count from 5 to 1, each number guiding you further and further down. Starting with number 5, deeper and deeper relax. Building the beginnings of that momentum to help you to just feel good. Down to number 4. Because you choose to go deeper, because you understand the more relaxed you become, the better you feel. And the better you feel, the more you know you're gliding into that peaceful state of hypnosis that helps you get the results you're looking for. Down to number 3. Drifting and dreaming, floating and gliding as all outside distractions or sounds can become less and less important, as the sound of my voice and your own relaxation within this process is all that matters for this next little while. And with that in mind, you relax down to 2. with that momentum and ease, it's gliding you down from 5 to 4 and 4 to 3, 3 to 2, and 2 all the way down to number 1. Comfortably relaxing. Just go ahead and imagine yourself in that relaxing, comfortable place, that peaceful, happy place with the sights, sounds, smells, and feels of a wonderful, easy place. And as you begin to become more and more aware of yourself in this environment, you begin to become more and more aware of its positive effects on you. That calm and serenity, that happiness and enjoyment. And I'm just going to talk about a few things, and there'll be moments where you pay attention, moments where you drift off, and wherever you are from moment to moment, your unconscious mind will make this work for you. That's right. Because I'd like you to think about this challenge, this issue, this aspect of your life that is less than ideal. And I'd like you to think back to the last time you complained about it. Now, maybe it was happening, the actual problem was happening. Maybe you were discussing it with somebody. Maybe you were just thinking about it in your head. Maybe the complaint was internal monologue. And whatever that is fine. You can just think back to a time when you were complaining about this issue. Now, like I said, there's nothing wrong inherently with complaining. There's nothing bad about complaining. The problem, however, is that we usually don't finish the complaint. And I'd like you to, in your mind's eye and in that memory, just imagine what it would be like if you could make a slight modification to that complaint. And in your mind, you could just say, instead I want. And you can pretend that in that memory, you were doing it properly. Complaining to the person that you were talking to, even just rehearsing in that internal monologue, you could imagine in this moment what it would be like if in that moment you had done it differently. If you had said that phrase with a positive outcome in mind. Now, maybe that means the person you're talking to would have a better understanding of what you're looking for. Maybe that means you would have a better understanding of what you're looking for. And maybe in that moment of frustration, you would have been able to be even more honest and blunt and emotional. Now let's think about those emotions of what you want. And you can imagine if that finished complaint, that stated outcome were possible and were in your near future. Now, I don't know what the issue is, and so I don't know if that can happen in the next 5 minutes or 5 days or somewhere in between. But I'd like you to imagine yourself in that future moment now. I'd like you to imagine in that future potential moment having achieved the stated outcome, the alternative, the instead I want. I want you to think about the feeling you have of getting the instead I want. Think about what it's going to feel like to have achieved that, to have attained that, to have accomplished that and done it. And from that feeling of success, you look back on other moments in between the complaint and the success. Other moments where you could have been knocked off course. Other moments where you could have been distracted. Other moments where you could have been frustrated or delayed. And in those moments, you did an important thing. In those moments, you remembered what you wanted instead, what you wanted more, what you wanted with the feelings that you get to experience now, the desires of the things you're currently enjoying. And for all those course corrections, for all those recommitments, for all those moments that could have been an excuse and you didn't let them be, you can take a moment to just thank yourself. To really say thank you. Thank you for putting in the work. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for making this possible. Because that gratitude is pointed at yourself. Being grateful for your own commitments. Being grateful for your own efforts. Knowing that this is not the end of this goal. This is a building block and a stepping stone to other goals, other motivations, other successes in your life. And you can use this as a proof of concept. That when there are things you'd like to complain about, you will finish your complaints. And in finishing your complaint, you will state a desired outcome, an improved situation, an accomplishment, an achievement, a process, and a conclusion that you really have in mind, not just saying what's wrong, but instead saying what really matters. And you don't have to worry about how you're going to do it. Instead of worrying about how you're going to do it, you can think about why you want to do it and how great it's going to be to get the good feelings. And as you do, you'll notice rationalizations and obstacles just melt away, fade away, and are so much more easily surmountable. You get to feel proud of yourself, and you get to enjoy the process of succeeding. You get to enjoy the process of succeeding, and in that, there is fun. In that, there is success, and in that, there is a recurring momentum. And in that recurring momentum, it's like pedaling a bike. Every time you would have been frustrated instead, that just generates more momentum, more drive, more purpose in this positive direction, in this exciting direction, in this process of succeeding. Because in a little bit, not yet, but in a moment, I am going to count up from 1 to 5. When I get to 5, you're going to open your eyes with a feeling about this change, with a feeling about this situation. And those things in the past would have been frustrating or limiting. Those things in the past that were less than perfect, however they might be described by you, you'll realize you finished the sentence. You finish the sentence with, and instead I want, or, but this is what I want more. There may be problems, but those problems are not an excuse for me to give up. They're the reason I will work harder in the opposite direction. They are the reason I'm going to work so hard to achieve that which matters most. And as you feel that commitment, you look forward to what it's going to be like in just a moment when I count up from 1 to 5. You look forward to what it's going to be like to open your eyes in the moment, ready to take action, ready to think differently, ready to do better by your standards and on your terms that you've just defined within yourself. And so with all that in mind, I'm just going to count from 1 to 5. When I get to 5, you'll open your eyes, ready to put all this together in a way that makes sense for you. Starting with number 1, as you feel your body start to stir just a little bit. Number 2, every breath you take in, more life, more energy, feeling good. As number 3, fingers and toes, hands and feet, arms and legs, feeling better and better. 4, coming all the way back to number 5, eyes open, back to the room, ready to put all of this into practice in the way that makes sense for you. Welcome back. There we go, nice and simple.
Welcome back. It's great to be here. By the way, somebody asked for an example of future pacing in the chat box, and I said that that should be our topic next week because we should devote a whole session to it. And then Heather was awesome enough to actually type out an example of future pacing when I said that. So she actually typed, and as you can see yourself, Mr. Nongard, writing the script, feeling how good it feels to know that you're providing helpful support to so many people, drifting forward in time, and perhaps see yourself distributing it to other people, hearing the dings and seeing the thanks from so many people for the effort you put into the script. So that's just a great example of what future pacing is. It's all about suggesting to the client that they will visualize, experience, create a stepping into of what the hypnotic suggestion is.
The desired outcome, yeah.
Right, exactly. So that was awesome. So yep, Brian says, thank you, Scott. That was great. I'll even give you some applause, Scott, here in the chat room. With some three.
Great.
That's how you applaud in the chat room. Every Sunday night we get together, same purpose, same time, same place, talk about hypnosis, share some thoughts and ideas. Interview some people, get some scripts like we will next week, and share some resources. Again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Above this video is access for the addiction videos that Scott and I made in Florida, and we hope you take advantage of viewing those. Anything you want to add, Scott, before we sign off?
No, we like giving you guys stuff. That's what we're giving you this week. I'm sure next week we'll find something else that we'll either give you or get our guest to give you on a discount or whatever it's going to be. Last thing I like to always say, if there's a topic you want to hear, if there's a person you'd like to see interviewed, keep asking. Whoever was just in the chat room, I think was it Brian, who said an example of future pacing. You guys want to know about something? We are happy to talk about it. So please, we take requests, send them our way, and let other people know if it's a topic that you think they might be interested in.
And we're better than a jukebox because we don't charge a quarter for your request. I'll write an awesome script this week on future pacing, and we'll talk about that next week, give some examples, and share those resources. So same time, same channel. Look forward to seeing you next Sunday night.
Mahalo.